War and rearmament in the world of the Westerners is once again about guaranteeing security. Intensive propaganda with a crusading tone, using all its tried and tested methods, is in the air. Here, we cannot go thoroughly into the concrete questions which concern our specific interests, but rather hint at something more general, one of the inner contradictions of the notion of war, which undermines the foundations of the so-called West. The technocratic error of thinking of war potential primarily in terms of arms and armaments, special technical industrial equipment and the like, and assessing man, according to the brutal expression now widespread in military literature, simply as human resources, has already been widely criticized. The quality and spirit of the men to whom the arms, the means of offense and destruction, are given, have represented, still represent, and will always represent the basic element of war potential. No mobilization will ever be total if men whose spirit and vocation are up to the tests which they must face cannot be created. How are things in this respect in the world of the democracies? They now want, for the third time in this century, to lead humanity to war in the name of the war against war. This requires men to fight at the same time that war as such is criticized. It demands heroes while proclaiming pacifism as the highest ideal. It demands warriors while it has made warrior a synonym for attacker and criminal, since it has reduced the moral basis of the just war to that of a large-scale police operation, and it has reduced the meaning of the spirit of combat to that of having to defend oneself as a last resort. Let us examine this problem more closely. In what cause should the man of the Western Bloc go to war and face death? It is obviously nonsensical to respond in the name of the bourgeois ideal, the carefully maintained security of existence which abhors risk, which promises that the maximum comfort of the human animal shall be easily accessible to all. Few will be deluded enough to imagine that, by sacrificing themselves, they can secure all this for future generations. Some will try to make others go and fight instead of them, offering as inducements beautiful words about humanitarianism, glory, and patriotism. Apart from this, the only thing a man in such a world will fight for is his own skin. His skin is the same in Curzio Malapati's sense as here, quote, "Certainly, only the skin is undeniable and tangible. One no longer fights for honor, for freedom, for justice. One fights for this disgusting skin. You cannot even imagine what man is capable of what heroisms and infamies to save his skin." End quote. If one wants a profession of faith from the democratic world beyond all its pretenses, it is contained in these words. They express the only credo, leaving aside mere verbiage and lies, with which it can spiritually equip its army. This means to rush to the crusade against the communist threat only out of physical terror, of terror for one's own skin, for the frightening, wavering ideal of Babbitt, of bourgeois safety, of the civilization of the domesticated and standardized human animal, which eats and copulates, and the limits of whose horizon is Reader's Digest, Hollywood, and the sports stadiums. Thus, those who are fundamentally lacking in heroism will seek to awaken warriors for the defense of the West by playing upon the complex of anxiety, since they have deeply demoralized the true Western soul, since they have debased and demeaned, firstly, the true basis of the state, hierarchy, and virile solidarity, and secondly, the notion of war and combat. They must now play the trump card of the anti-Bolshevik crusade. Not many illusions can remain concerning the sort of morality which can support this endeavor, and which no industrial mobilization with atomic bombs, flying super fortresses, supersonic fighters and so on, can replace. It is with these trump cards, alone with the Western world, now stands on the threshold of a possible third worldwide cataclysm, having broken down and insulted everything which had survived from the authentic warrior traditions of Europe and the Far East. In the opposing bloc, there are forces which combine technology with the elemental force of fanaticism, of dark and savage determination, and of the contempt for individual life found among masses which, whether through their own ancient traditions or through the exaltation of the collectivist ideology, hardly value their own existence. This is the tide which will swell forth not only from the Red East, but from the whole of a contaminated and unleashed Asia. However, what is really required to defend the West against the sudden rise of these barbaric and elemental forces is the strengthening, to an extent perhaps still unknown to Western man, of a heroic vision of life. Apart from the military technical apparatus, the world of the Westerners has at its disposal only a limp and shapeless substance. And the cult of the skin, the myth of safety and of war on war, and the ideal of the long, comfortable, guaranteed democratic existence, which is preferred to the ideal of the fulfillment which can be grasped only on the frontiers between life and death, in the meeting of the essence of living with the extreme of danger. Some will object that after all that Europe has been through, we have had enough of militarism and warmongering, and total war should be left in the past and forgotten. Granted, militarism can be left behind us, since it is only as a degraded, inferior echo of a heroic, and far from exclusively belligerent, conception, and to condemn all heroism as militarism is one of the expedients of democratic propaganda, an expedient which has now begun to backfire on its proponents. In any case, unfortunately, there probably won't be any choice. It will be hard for the forces already in motion to stop, in general, irrespective of the outcome of the current Korean affair, and there will only remain one course of action: to ride the tiger, as the Hindu expression puts it. One of the most highly praised contemporary writers in Europe has written things about modern war which he experienced thoroughly and actively. He volunteered, was injured 18 times, and was awarded the highest German military decoration, whose value will become more and more obvious in the times to come. He has said that modern man, by creating the world of technology and putting it to work, has signed his name to a debt which he is now required to pay. Technology, his creature, turns against him, reduces him to its own instrument, and threatens him with destruction. This fact manifests itself most clearly in modern war, total, elemental war, the merciless struggle with materiality itself. Man has no choice but to confront this force, to render himself fit to answer this challenge, to find in himself hitherto unsuspected spiritual dimensions, to awake to forms of extreme, essentialized heroism, forms which, while caring nothing for his person, nevertheless actualize what the aforementioned author calls the absolute person within him, thus justifying the whole experience. There is nothing else one can say. Perhaps this challenge will constitute the positive side of the game for especially qualified men, given that game must be accepted and played out anyway. The preponderance of the negative part, of pure destruction, may be frightening, infernal, but no other choice is given to modern man, since he himself is the sole author of the destiny and the aspect which he is now starting to see. This is not the moment to dwell on such prospects. Besides, what we have said does not concern any notion in particular, nor even the present time. It concerns the time when things will become serious, globally, not merely for the interests of the bourgeois, capital world, but for those men who know and, at some point, will still be able to gather together into an unshakable block.